Double face cards are a new mechanic that was introduced in Innistrad. Basically, with double face cards, you have two cards. Actually, one card is printed on the front, and then instead of the traditional Magic the Gathering back, you'll have another second card. Um, with these cards, there have some that can transform whenever they want. They have some that can transform based on your field presence. However, with the basic Werewolf mechanic, the cards will transform depending on the number of spells played on the turn prior. So in human form, it reads, at the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform, said werewolf. And on the flip side, it says, at the beginning of each upkeep, if a player casts two or more spells during the last turn, transform the werewolf. Now, it does lead to an interesting aspect of the deck, which really forces your opponent to play out their hand and really just make plays that they wouldn't make normally. An example of this, you'll be playing someone and you'll have a huge field of werewolves, and you're going to force them to basically play a creature and then maybe play like an instant at a sorcery speed just to get those two spells in for the turn to flip them. And a lot of times when you do that, they're going to be top decking, and they're going to have two turns where you can just pass and bring out your werewolves, and they're going to have to really draw into another spell or two spells just to flip your werewolves again. And that really lets the deck go into those 5, 6, 7, 8 turn games where you can really get the wins in. The only problem with this is against decks that can pretty easily drop two or three spells in a turn. If not humans, for example, they can easily just spam you with one drops. But against other decks that have high casting cost creatures and spells, it's pretty difficult for them to get over the werewolf, especially when you're swinging with 8/5 tramplers and the like, and different tokens that are all pumped up. So the deck is extremely fun to play. It really puts a whole different aspect into Magic that it's really never been done before. Okay, so for the deck, I start out with a play set of 4 Reckless Waif. It's the 1-drop. It's a 1/1. If your opponent doesn't have any answers for it, or doesn't cast a spell, basically, on turn 2, it's going to become a 3/2. It's just kind of vanilla, basic werewolf, but the 3/2 is extremely irrelevant. And it has actually won me a couple games, especially against those decks that really need to cast higher costing spells, or if they can't draw into a monster, or if they just can't cast a spell. I mean, they're going to be really screwed and hard pressed to get it off the board. And up next, we have a playset of Mayor of Averbrook. It's the 1/1 2-drop that gives all other human creatures you control plus 1/1. On the flip, it's a 3/3 that generates a 2/2 wolf token every turn and gives all other wolf and werewolf creatures you control plus 1/1. This card in itself really just takes over the game. Especially if you're not even going to attack with them, you're just going to generate wolf tokens. They are permanent wolf tokens. They do not die at the end of the turn. And with his bonus, they actually become 3/3 wolf tokens, which is extremely awesome. And just having like 1 or 2 of these out, it's going to be pretty difficult for your opponent to come back, because you can just generate, chump blockers, you're generating attackers. All your other creatures are getting that plus 1/1, which is actually extremely relevant, giving that plus 1 to the toughness. Alright, so up next we have the playset of Daybreak Rangers, a 3-drop. And this is actually one of my favorite cards in the deck. The ability to deal 2 damage to a creature with flying is just amazing. There's so many flyers going around this format, and you don't really have a good way to stop them. I mean, you have your Burn Suite, but this card is just an instant answer to that. He deals 2 damage to target creature with flying, and on the flip, he becomes a 4/4 that can fight any creature you want. It's just amazing, that card. It's just so good. I mean, they're not going to block with their really important setup cards. They're not going to be attacking with those. You can knock out flyers. You can knock out, there's so many cards in the format that, your opponent really, it's crucial for them to set up. And dealing 4 damage to their toughness is ridiculous for just a red, basically. It also, especially with the other pumps, like your Mayor of Averbrook giving it +1, your Full Moon's Rise giving it the +1/0. It becomes an extremely good card. Basically, with just those 2 on the board, it's +6, or you're dealing 6 damage to their toughness, which is pretty good in this current format. And up next, we have the playset of Kroon's Outlaw. Kroon's Outlaw is an extremely good card. It's 3 CMC with first strike, and it's a 2/2. On the flip side, it becomes a double striking 3/3 that has an effect that states your opponent can only block your werewolf creatures with 2 or more creatures, which is awesome because especially if they only have one creature or like an odd number of creatures and you have more than they have, basically you're just getting in one werewolf in a turn. And I mean, this card is just amazing. With the other bonuses in the deck to attack and or to power and toughness, you're really swinging with a huge monster. And with this card and Instigator Gang on the field, if they choose not to block you when they're in human form, drop a Moon Mist, bring them up to 6/6, or bring them to 6/3. With a double strike, that's 12. Instigator Gang puts in 8, and that's game. So up next, like I said, we have the play set of Instigator Gangs, the 2/3 for 4. It doesn't look that great at face value, but it gives all attacking creatures you control +1/0, which is interesting because unlike the battle cry mechanic, this creature does not actually have to attack. So once you get it flipped, it becomes a 5/5, which is much, much better. That gives all attacking creatures +3/0. It also has Trample, which is awesome because you're just really going to force players to not want to chump block or not want to chump block as much. So it basically becomes an 8/5 when it attacks. Like I said before, him plus Croon Outlaw is game by itself, which is just awesome. And like I said, usually in this deck, if you're playing it right, you're going to swing for game on turn 5 or 6. Okay, so on to the spells. Just a real techie card for the first one. I'm running 2 Noxious Revival. Noxious Revival is just an interesting card for getting back your burn spells, getting back your Full Moon's Rises, getting back your Moon Mist. It's just a real good utility card. A lot of times I'll be tapped out and I can just drop the 2-line for this, which is always, a viable option, or I can just tap the green. And it's an instant as well. Really fits in with the theme of the deck. You'll see a lot of the spells are instants that, just so I don't have to play them on my own turn, and I can transform my werewolves and still be able to function without casting on my own turn. So up next, I go on to my burn suite. I'm running 8 burn cards. I'm running 3 shocks for the 1-drops. There's a lot of 2/2 or 1/1s or 1/2s in the format that are pretty annoying, especially in green-white humans. So shock is an excellent card. Just get rid of those turn 1 before they really start hitting me for big damage. I'm running the 2 Incinerate. Incinerate's an excellent card, dealing 3 damage, and it can't regenerate that turn. I'm pretty confident in my burn suite, but if you guys do see an issue with it, just let me know. Any criticism is welcome. And last of the burn suite, I'm running 3 Brimstone Volley. Brimstone Volley is an excellent card. Really, really forces players not to want to jump block. I mean, you're dealing 5 damage to them, which is usually you can push for a game with it. You can, get rid of a Titan after you chump block it. It's extremely relevant. It's 3 mana basically for a 5 damage, which is awesome. And really the key card of the deck, Moon Mist. Transform all humans and prevent all combat damage dealt this turn by other creatures other than werewolves and wolves. Such an awesome card. It's good for offense, good for defense, good for giving you board presence. It's just ridiculous. Especially when you attack and they choose not to declare blockers, you can just activate Moon Mist, transform stuff, and then usually it's game after that. So on to the enchantments. I'm running 2 Full Moon's Rise. A lot of people run this card sideboarded, but in my meta there's a lot of humans and they can just spawn chump blocking tokens. So I think that Full Moon's Rise is an excellent card for the main deck. Giving your wolves +1/0 and trample is awesome, and the counter board wipe of regenerating all your werewolves is also good. Now I do understand the logic behind the sideboarding, and so these 2 cards I'm testing with other cards right now. The cards that I'm testing with are 2 Phyrexian Metamorphs or 2 Shrine of Burning Rage. And also, I guess if you really wanted to, Noxious Revival could also be taken out to fit in 2 Metamorphs or 2 Shrines of Burning Rage. I still need to do more testing with it, so if you guys do have any suggestions for that, just let me know. I think Full Moon's Rise is going to be my main board card for now, but I do have no problem sideboarding it and putting in maybe a Phyrexian Metamorph to copy a Flipped Werewolf or a Shrine of Burning Rage just to push for that extra damage for game. So on to the lands, I'm running, it's red-green, so I'm running 8 mountains and 6 forests. Basically the ratio just turns down to there's actually more cards in the deck that are red, obviously, and the fact that Croon's Outlaw requires 2 reds, 2 mountains to cast a spell. This is really a huge deciding factor. If it was 2 and a and just a one or two colorless and a red, I would have probably ran a different ratio. I probably would have ran 7 and 7. But right now, 8 and 6 works out extremely well. I know some people have run 23 lands, but for me in my testing, 23 just wasn't enough. 24 is just right. But I mean, that's basically up to player preference. Up next, I'm running 4 of the tap lands, 4 Copperline Gorge and 4 Rootbound Crag. People don't like Copperline Gorge, but I mean, it's in my opinion. I mean, there's no other substitute. You don't have your fetch lands, you don't have your evolving wilds, so Copperline and Rootbound are really good in my opinion. And last, one of the newer cards from Innistrad, Kessig Wolfrun. This is an excellent card. In this deck, you're not really casting a lot of creatures late game or middle game. You really do want to kind of avoid that and just, basically you're just going to keep dropping land anyways. So Kessig Wolfrun gives, for X, red, green, tap. It gives target creature plus X0 and trample. Basically, when you have 9 mana on the field, or 5, 6, 7 mana, you can just pump all your mana into Kessig Wolfrun, give a creature plus 3 and trample, and usually that's pretty good for game, especially with cards like Croon Outlaw that does a double strike, and other cards like that, Daybreak Ranger. If you want to really fight one of their bigger creatures like a Titan, activate that, blow it up, and you're pretty good to go. It's also defensive, I guess, against the illusion cards. My meta has a couple of those decks still running around. So Kessig Wolfrun targets them and destroys them. It's one of my favorite lands. I've seen people run 3 and take out, basically, they run 7 Mountain, 6 Forests, and 3 Kessigs. But my testing, I just wasn't comfortable running 3 Kessigs just because when I draw a Kessig, and it could have been a mountain, and it could have let me drop my turn 1 Reckless Waif, it's just a no-go for me. The sideboard still does need work, and I will post a video of that later. But right now that's the main deck, so if you guys have any questions or comments about it, just let me know.